Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to this Energy Arts 5 Elements Qigong and Training Center webinar. We just went on live. If a few people can type in the chat and let me know if you can hear me okay, and let me know that you can see this front screen. Maybe type in the chat where you guys are listening or gals are dialing in from, which country. That'd be awesome. All right, Singapore. Hiroshima, that's cool. Australia, northern Minnesota, Maryland, Denver, Berlin. Wow, Berlin late, Belgium, Michigan. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. This line has 1,000 people on it, and I think we had 3,000 people register. So I hope everybody got on. Normally there's about a 30%, 40% show up rate, but it's a really big webinar. We're super excited. Bruce, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Great. So we've got Bruce Frantzis here, the Taoist lineage holder, Bruce Frantzis, and also the founder of Energy Arts. And Paul Palante, are you there too?
I'm here. How you doing, Rich?
Okay. Hey, Paul. And he's one of Bruce's more senior students. I'm going to be moderating today. I'm going to be taking questions, just a few things. One is we're going to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be covering in just a minute. You can type in both questions into the Q&A, and you can also type them into the Zoom webinar chat. With 1,000 people, I don't know how many we'll get to. We are going to answer some Q&A at the end of this call, and so you can ask questions throughout, and I'll be watching that screen. If there's like hundreds of questions, there's no way we're going to get to everyone, but we'll try to answer as many as possible. And I think we'll just get going here. Okay. See if I can get the next slide. Thanks for everybody responding there. There was just like this slew of people that were answering the chat. So I don't know how many messages we have, but a lot. So here's what we're going to be covering today. Bruce is going to give a quick introduction for those who may not know him. There are some newbies on the call just about his background. We're going to go into the 5 elements and specifically how to use it for qigong sets. This is the first time Energy Arts has ever offered anything like this on an online training program, and Bruce does retreats around the world and teaches us live. We have a big reveal that's going to happen about 20 minutes in that should affect the future of the Energy Arts community. You're going to want to stick around for that. And then we're going to give some options to participate both in this big reveal and also this new 5 Elements Qigong program that we're going to be offering. At the end of this call, there is going to be nothing to buy. So mainly just going to be information today. Tomorrow we are going to send out an email and open up a few things for you that we're going to tell you about today. But this call specifically, there's actually nothing to buy. So we're not going to try to hard sell you or anything. It's just here for information. And then we're going to end with some Q&A. Okay, I'm going to give it to you, Bruce, here. And if you could just give a quick overview of your path with the Taoist lineage and how you came to be sitting before us here.
My path started when I was 6 years old. When I started, out of my own head, just came up the idea that is the basic principle behind Advaita Vedanta in India's meditation tradition, who am I, and all that kind of stuff. Then when I was 12, I started martial arts. By the time I was 18, I had, like loads of black belts, 8 to be precise. And then when I was 14, I started doing Zen Buddhism, which actually has a direct connection with Taoism. Is because a lot of what is in Zen Buddhism was directly transferred from Taoism in China. And then I studied in-depth martial art, and then I got inducted into one of the oldest Taoist lineages in China, which then took up, 7 years in the sense of, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 7 years of very arduous training. And then I became a Taoist priest. And I hold, actually, you could say, separate lineages also in Tai Chi, qigong, Tuina, Bagua, Xingyi, Taoist meditation, Taoist yoga, all sorts of things. I am a reluctant author of 13 books and seminal video training programs. I have only written books to help people because I personally don't get off on writing and never have. I've taught over let's put it this way, about 5 or 10 years ago, and I can't remember exactly when, I had already taught 20,000 students. I want to help as many students and instructor to learn these arts as the time I have remaining in my life, because I'm 70 years old. I have no expectations of living to be 200 or 300. So this is the last shot in my life. And what I hope to do is that in 10 or 15 years, if it's humanly possible, download everything that I learned in Taoism, because I'm a Taoist lineage holder. My lineage tracks back 2,500 years. And so what I would like to do is to teach everything that's in that, in the hope that a few worthy disciples will show up who can also become lineage holder and can spread what Taoism is in the West. So the 5 elements are critical to all practices in Taoism, regardless of which group, which sect, which school. This is very, very basic and important stuff, just like the 5 elements are actually important to everything that you would call yoga and everything that you would know about in Tibetan Buddhism. This is one of the seminal pieces of how everything in Orient works.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. And I had to cajole him into truncating his story. So you can also go to energyarts.com and get his full stories or in his books. But we really wanted to get in the meat of the presentation. So why don't you tell us, Bruce, a little bit about the 5 elements in qigong and how they're used in qigong? And here's this basic slide here. Give us an overview of how the Taoists use the 5 element practices.
Well, in all manifestation, I mean, anything that comes about, whether it's physical and in terms of human beings, whether it's mental or emotional, there are 5 qualities or 5 phases of energy that essentially create all manifestation. Now, the way they were taught in China was many ways. They were taught in internal martial arts. They were taught within qigong. They were taught within health practices. 5 elements is critical to all, basic or high-level Chinese medicine. It was taught in terms of healing. It's taught in meditation when you want to start dealing with actually what are the underlying foundations of how the mind works and how spirituality works. So you have that these 5 elements, you have to think that in order for something to manifest, to some degree, the 5 elements are going to be critical not only to how that thing manifests, but the way that whatever is happening inside a person or in a situation, what is its interrelationship to everything else it's going to come in contact with. For example, if someone had, let's say, the water element very dominant, then this is not necessarily going to be the most stable person in the world or the most stable situation in the world, but what it will do will make sure that everything that was in a situation flows and moves and transforms. And each of the elements has its own qualities. And that's about the only thing I can say, because otherwise you're going to be on this for hours on end.
Okay,
Now,
so what we're going to do now is kind of take you through each of the 5 elements, and you can kind of give us a download for each. So we're going to start with the wood element, Bruce.
Now, the nature of the wood element is that it is stability. It grows down and up like a tree. The deeper its roots go, the higher the tree grows. And wood elements have many common things, especially for human beings. Wood element is probably the quality which is most responsible for human attachment. Wood is stability. Wood wants to graft onto something. It wants to join with it. It wants to stay with it. Wood does not particularly like change. A tree doesn't want to burn down. A tree doesn't suddenly want to turn into liquid. It wants to stay how it is and develop within how it is. So that's just very fundamental to the nature of the wood element. And the other thing is that the wood element is what penetrates into things. Just like a tree, it comes out of the ground, or a seed. in the ground will literally grow through concrete. So it has this tremendous projecting quality. Now, if you look at human beings have 8 energy bodies, and the wood element is how it can activate within any of them. Physically, it could, it can be whether it controls blood pressure, it controls blood flow, because blood has to push through vessels or it's not going to do what it can do. But also in a person's mind, wood people have the ability to really stick with things. That's on the positive side. On the negative side, they also have the tendency that they not only stick with things, but they can never get off it. So, if they're in something, then, okay, that's very good. That's great in terms of perseverance, in terms of following through. But it's also the fact, if it's time to change, wood has real trouble with that. Okay, so these are, at a psychological dimension, at an emotional dimension, and you also have the quality of thought. Wood has the ability to suddenly grow through literally obstacles in a person having real things of thought and then carry them through. So the wood element, it manifests in each of your energy bodies. It manifests in how your physical body works. It manifests how the chi that makes your body work, the quality that will be inside that chi. It manifests in terms of what is, let's say, a driving force behind your emotions, of which there are many ways that can happen. It also is the way a person can mentally be. Wood also is the quality that allows a person in the psychic field to not get lost or confused about the amorphousness of the space that's in the psychic field, but actually be able to travel through it and keep coherency while it does that. At the karmic level, well, all the things about wood can penetrate, as well as wood can get terribly stuck. And these are primary, karmic dispositions that many people have, as well as they have karmic dispositions for the other 5 elements, as well as when you start talking about a human being's essence. It is the ability, it is something that is absolutely necessary for a person to actually be able to go through all the distractions, everything that will take a person off center spiritually, and just keep on progressing forward until finally they reach what the end of it is. So again, the wood element is important. Some people are usually dominated in their lives by 1 or 2 elements. Some people are only 1, some people are a mixture of 2. And then all the other elements interact with those primary ones. So when you start talking about what is the nature of people's personalities, or what is the nature of how they manifest and do things in the world, or if they come upon a project, what is driving them, and it's useful to know what is inside you that will do it, but it's also useful to know what inside you that is lacking, that you may have to take other elements to compensate for that. So what exists in nature? Very much the wood element is consistency, and it's very much about stability in the process of growth. So always when the subject of growth, growing about whatever, well, that has a lot to do with how the wood element is operative. So if it's strong, people grow easily. If it's weak, people don't grow so easily. So now we'll go on to the next element. Now, the metal element is very funny. In the Chinese method, the metal element is very much about many things. First of all, it is the nature of the mind, the nature of how the mind works, the nature of the way the mind encompasses that which is both physical, but also that which is non-physical. For example, in the Indian systems, the equivalent of it is space, just the sheer infinite amount of space. But that's because metal can have a central position from which it can recognize everything else. I'd love to have the screen back, because your faces are blocking what I'm supposed to be doing here. I don't know if you can just kind of get your faces out of that so I can read what it is or move it over to the side. That would be helpful.
You
So anyway, the metal element has a lot of different types of practices. Physically, when you talk about the metal element, you're talking about the spine and the brain. Now, we live in a world where everybody's got back problems, but most people don't really think about the fact that their spine is growing out of their brain. And so in this age of, shall we say, extreme mental activity, when the energy of metal is balanced, mental activity usually is balanced and strong. If it's weak, mental activity is usually weak and disjointed. So for example, if you have someone who is what we used to call when I was younger, a space cadet, they're spacey, they're distracted, they don't have the ability to stay focused on anything, at least mentally, then they have a deficiency in the mental element. Whereas when you have people that usually can have tremendous concentration and focus, well, their mental element is usually in good condition. And this is equally important in qigong, or especially if you're talking about meditation, where when you get into the more subtle levels of the mind that really drive us, it's not that easy to stay on track. It's not that easy to be able to be consciously aware of not just one little thing, but a huge number of things at once, all with equal clarity. So again, qigong, the metal element, a big part of it, for example, when you have the art of Xing, one of the things that the metal element is about is to give the person the ability to actually be coherent and have their focus never drop out when they're doing something. So for example, if you want to look at it as a martial art, well, if your mind wavers in the middle of attack or defense, you're toast. But if your mind can be very relaxed and always staying on where it's going, it's very important. So the metal element is extremely important in terms of mentally being able to achieve goals and mentally just being able to stay on track without becoming scattered. Now, metal element practices, I mean, there's so many of them in qigong. There's so many of them in meditation. For example, part of the practice in Bagua, when you go around a circle and your attention is focusing on one finger, that is strengthening the metal element within a person's body. In Xing, the chopping fist is strengthening the metal element in someone's body. But the biggest thing to consider is that when you talk about the mental element, I said in the modern times, it is what strengthens, upgrades, balances, enables a person not to become mentally distracted and stay on task and be able just to penetrate. For example, I had someone I know who's a really top rolfer. I told him this stuff. He was saying, oh yeah, with my fingers that you can go in and whoomp, you can just go into their body until you reach the right place where you got to do whatever it is you got to do. The fact of the matter is that concentration, which then translates through the body, that's essentially a quality of the mental body. So anyway, these are some considerations about the mental body.
Okay, Bruce, are you still able to see the screen now, or do you need help with that?
No, I can see the screen. It's okay. It's just that one, it was blocking off. I don't actually know what it was. So I just went.
Those 4 boxes with our faces, Bruce, if you just click and drag the black bar across, you can move that around.
Okay. All right. Yeah. The black bar?
Yeah, right above our heads. If you just kind of click and hold, you can drag it away from the words.
And just for people,
okay, I got it. I'm not the best. I'm not the best human being in terms of computers. I'm very good. Taoism, I'm very good in meditation, but I am not a member of the computer generation.
And just for people who've joined us late, we had a couple hundred people join since we started the call. Please type in where you're calling in from or where you're dialing in from. We've got people from around the world. Super exciting. And you can ask questions. We have a lot of people on this call, almost 1,000 people. So we'll get to as many as we can at the end, and we'll ask them throughout. And we're currently going through the 5 elements, and we're on the fire element. Take it away, Bruce.
Okay. Well, just to complete the mental element for 1 second, since computers got mentioned, You know, the metal element is something that is used very much working with computers, all mental activity. Then the big problem is that if the metal element is not balanced, people very often disconnect with their emotions. They very often disconnect with their ability to, let's just say, meld whatever's in their environment, whether it's human or not. But mentally, they can go somewhere, but not necessarily the rest of them. So this is kind of like, you know, shall we say, the downside of the metal element. Now, if we go and we look at the fire element, we now have a consideration. The fire element is what normally, what in the West we call creates extreme passion. But there's a problem. And the problem is, from the point of view of meditation and qigong and whatnot, fire burns. And so qigong practices that focus just so much on creating the passion, creating the force, creating the excitement, if they don't go to where instead they turn into light, then you get problems. Because light doesn't have that sort of a downside. It won't burn your insides. It won't burn your nervous system. It will not cause your internal organs to get overexcited. So, especially within qigong and meditation, you know, the big emphasis is that eventually fire has to turn into light, and then all the practice of light. Some of them are related to fire, and some of them are related to water. It all depends upon how they're done. Now, the fire element and its practice, there are too many qigong practices that are fire element, but there are some very basic things about it. First of all, the fire element is about rising energy in the body. So for example, if you see almost all these pictures and things, you're always showing light going up a body or energy rising up a body. And in what are called traditions with a fire approach, that is how they do it. But most people don't get to the point to where they can translate that in the light. Now, there's something else about fire. Fire can really move and jump around. When you see people really passionate, their emotions, their mind can be all over the place, or a creative genius, their mind can be on something and then jump to something else entirely. Well, that's like fire, like a forest fire. The fire jumps from one tree to the other. So it could jump to, let's say, the positive effect or to negative effect. That all depends upon how it's jumping. And if it's too erratic and there's not some sense of strong stability, and fire very often can take people right off the edge and going a little bit crazy, as many artists and many creative people are known for when they go into a bad cycle. Okay, you know, I think of someone like Vincent van Gogh, and that would be a bad example, although whether that happened because of all the fire that was producing the genius he was producing, or simply because he got paint poisoning, is somewhat of a debatable issue. But the fact of the matter is that this capacity to become extremely creative has always been associated with fire. And that's because of the way an idea can jump to another idea, and another idea can jump to another idea. But again, that's if it gets to the stage of light. If it's just fire in the beginning, it does wonderful things. But if it stays fire, fire burns. Fire can burn your central nervous system. Fire can jump so much that you don't have the coherency, the stability, the connectedness that allows the creativity to actually go somewhere that's usable, as opposed to just, you could have too much fire in the brain is a quality that, for example, schizophrenics have, where their mind is jumping all over the place and jumping into this and jumping into that. So you have fire things in martial arts. The fire element is what allows a person to suddenly explode. The fire element is what allows a person to change from one technique to another with incredible speed. Okay, but then again, if it gets too much, if it's too much fire, then it burns. As I said, it just makes a person become unstable. So that's, everything has always got a good and a bad side, and that's the bad side of fire. Good side of fire is it can bring out tremendous creative capacities. It can bring out tremendous passion. And then, like any form of passion, when any form of passion goes to such too much, too big an extreme, then the fact of the matter is you can start wrecking people. Okay, I mean, that's just what happens. So anyway, so this is the idea. But when you have fire, again, its positive side is it turns into light. And light can carry any amount of information, any amount of whatever you have. I mean, for example, you see many pictures of Jesus Christ, or many, Tibetan Buddhist pictures. You see Jesus Christ, and what you see coming out of him is just light. As a matter of fact, that was actually what the original Greek meant, the one who was anointed with light. So again, that's it. But anyway, that's the fire element. And now we go on to the water element. Now, the water element is exceedingly important for human beings because, if nothing else, water is the dominant form in our bodies. We're 90% water. Fluids of every kind, not just blood, but the stuff that runs around your brain and your body and between your cells are all the water element. In Chinese medicine, balancing out those elements is extremely important. But the nature of water is the ability to be able to flow, to not get fixated, to be able to move with the changes of life. Now, I would say that in this modern time, my general experience, and I think the experience of many, is that people really have trouble changing, just moving with the speed of change that's happening around them. Everything. I mean, things that the whole world is changing at an incredibly rapid rate. New things are coming out. Some of it gets handled well. Some of it gets handled badly. Conditions which would not have caused war or mental, breaking down, they're not. But water is something that allows a person to flow. Like fire, there is light inside of water. And when you work with the water element, beside its capacity to enable flow, which is very obvious, you just take some water and pour it, it flows. But it's also the fact to get the light or the essential energies that are at the bottom of your cellular structure, that they can flow also. In martial arts, the water element is what allows you to be able to change without any inertia. Fire creates inertia. When a log burns, that flame goes out and it has inertia until it finally dies out and goes somewhere. But water has the capacity to not have inertia and be able to set a basis inside a human being, both physically, mentally, emotionally, psychically, and even in terms of karma. People often have very strong karmic stuck points. And because they can't flow with what's coming up inside them, karma just really, it's almost like being hit in the head with a 2x4. It causes tremendous strain. It causes tremendous inability to be able to somehow work through that karma, or at least to be able to withstand and move with these karmic aftershocks that are happening inside your life. So I think water is very, very important in terms of chi. The ability to be able to be conscious of chi and to be able to get it to move easily. That's a quality of the water element. Now, water accepts everything. That's another quality of it. It's incredibly flexible. And today, one of the, let's just say, today and every time throughout history, one of the really big problems people have is that if they can't flow, they become very judgmental. It must be like this, it must be like that, which would be okay if you were God. If you were God and you said, well, you see that mountain, it's really too tall, forget it. We make it small, or we're going to make it 3 times the size. But human beings don't have that ability. So what they have to do is to take in the situations they're in, be able to flow with situations regardless of how easy or how difficult they are. In all soft martial arts, the water element is extremely important, not just because of its ability to induce softness, but for its ability to change and have power that suddenly, like a tidal wave, shows up, but then it just goes back to a cool, just, a nice, even, flat water line. So in meditation, the water element is extremely important, that when you encounter all sorts of obstacles inside you, that somehow you can stay with them and negotiating without disconnecting from them, without denying them, without jumping into another direction, which doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be comfortable or uncomfortable. It's just that you can roll with them until they finally kind of resolve themselves. Now, the earth element in Chinese thinking is often associated with the space element in the Indian traditions. But the Chinese look at it a little bit different because the Indian traditions are very metaphysical and the Chinese are much more earthy. So you have a few things about the earth element. It's not, that it's about dirt, although dirt does have the chi of earth for sure. What it's more about is that the earth element is the integrative force where all the other four elements are inside of it and how they meld. For example, if you go in the dirt can hold water, like a dike. Fire doesn't necessarily burn earth. Earth can contain fire. That's why you have fire pits. It can handle wood. Wood can grow out of it. But the biggest thing is that with the other elements, it is the ability to integrate experiences. It's the ability to integrate chi flows. It's the ability to integrate mental flows. It's the ability to integrate all the forces of karma that were in you, so that rather than being moved about like a leaf in the wind, somehow you can still be blowing, but there will be something that will make that leaf very stable. So it's, in terms of your energy bodies, the biggest single thing is that any energy body you have, physical, mental, emotional, psychic, karmic, essence, if it's not stable, then life presents problems. The element will create problems in your life. And if it is stable, it will give you a platform from which any of the other elements can be able to reach their full potential. So it's the integrative capacity of the earth element that's important. Now, earth element practices, every one of them is about integrating or stabilizing something. And it's a reason why a lot of people like to practice with their feet in the dirt. It's also that the earth element is what can connect you to being a physical being on the earth. You are not an ethereal spirit. You are not floating about in the sky. You're actually of the earth. And Taoism is known as being an extremely earthy religion because it looks at the ability in every way of a human being actually to integrate with the planet they're on, the planet Earth. So this becomes very, very important. And earth practices are absolutely necessary in the five elements of attaining integration with whatever it is you want to integrate with. So I think that kind of covers the five elements.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Why don't we field a few questions here about the elements? I want to say that we probably had 50 questions there, so there's just no way that we're going to get to all the questions here. But one question is, are certain qigong sets linked to certain elements?
Yeah. For example, now, if you talk about any qigong set, no matter what happens, the five elements are all going to be in every one of their movements in some way. I mean, that doesn't say whether it's a little or a lot. I mean, 5% is not the same thing as 75%. But for example, in the programs I teach, all of the Neigong, all the chi practices classically in Taoism were called the 16 Neigongs. They are 16, not techniques, but generic principles of practice and manifestation. And the 16 Neigong was about doing all that. But in the sets that I teach, and I work this out with my teacher, there's also the fact that there are 5 basic ones that each one of them, of its own nature, beside doing everything else it does, will intrinsically bring out one of the 5 elements. So, for example, opening the energy gates of your body is about the water element. The marriage of heaven and earth is about wood. The bend the bow and shoot the arrow is about metal. The spiraling energy body is about fire. God's plane in the clouds, which combines all of them, is about earth, because it is what integrates all the 5 elements to the greatest extent. So that's anyway what I do. But you will find that, you know, if you have people who really understand qigong, you can also break it down that some parts of the body are manifesting one element more than the other. But that is, we say, a fairly arbitrary way. You can do it. It's not false, but it's also not totally true. So anyway, that's what I do, because if you were to, you know, there are so many systems where this is called 5 element qigong, but then when you really break it down, they don't actually really work with the 5 elements, or they do, but in all sorts of ways. The sets that I teach are the ones which have classically been used in Taoism for 3,000 years to enable a person to understand what these primal energies are.
Okay, great. I'm going to pair off some of these questions for the end, and we're almost 37 minutes in, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the next section, and we're going to have Paul take over this section, and we're going to give the big reveal here, which I flipped the slide already. A few people said, "Oh, I saw the slide already." So, all right. So the big reveal is basically that we've been working.
I'm still seeing the earth. Oh, great! Now it came up.
And make sure you're not on mute, Paul, just as you talk. But basically, we've been moving forward. As many in the community know, we've been working to get a retreat center or a training center, and it looks like it's finally going to happen. So we've actually are in a position to where this is going to happen sooner rather than later. Can you speak, Paul? Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I'm going to kind of turn it over to Paul here for this part of the presentation, and we're just going to have a conversation about what that means and what we're going to be doing. And as part of that, we're going to be releasing some programs, one of which will be about the 5 elements. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Paul.
Thanks. Okay, so hopefully I've met a lot of you guys out there. My name's Paul Palante. I am the events coordinator for Energy Arts. So we've been all over the globe together. I know there's a big tribe of Energy Arts folks. We get to see each other at all these great events. But sometimes going to all these events is, it's like around the world in 80 days. You know, that's always been a challenge that when we meet up, you know, we're going everywhere. And every time you go somewhere, there's getting used to the new spot, there's accommodations, there's flights, there's all these things that made really settling into the practices something that was difficult to do. Really fun in a lot of ways, always great to engage with the community, but definitely difficult. And then you had other challenges, like if you really needed to learn energy gates and that's where you wanted to begin, if that wasn't in the teaching cycle of what was coming up, then you might end up with spiraling energy body. And even though there's a circular nature to learning the system, the energy art system, you know, you were just kind of always trying to get in wherever you could. And that could kind of always cause some difficulties. And we're at this very exciting moment where we're going to start a new center. There's going to be an actual Taoist training center, a headquarters for energy arts, where we can meet up and start taking these practices to a deeper level. There's going to be ongoing teachings that you're going to be able to get in on, and Bruce is really going to have the chance to open up some of those deeper teachings that he has not been able to when we've been kind of gallivanting all across the globe. So a couple of specifics of that. Speaking of all of the wonderful 5 elements information that Bruce was just putting out there, one of the big challenges to finding the right spot was the energy of the land has to be very strong for a center like this to exist. The way that the energy mixes between heaven and earth in a specific spot creates conditions that are either very conducive to learning these practices or they're not. And in order to really establish a strong headquarters, we had to find a spot that had very good energy. And we certainly found it right outside of Boulder, the Denver Boulder area in Colorado. So we're right next to some amazing mountains, some very vibrant culture. And it's an 8,000 square foot facility. We're going to have a couple large training halls, one smaller training hall and one larger training hall. And it's going to be run as not only an event venue, but as an ongoing school where our senior instructors will be teaching, where Bruce will be teaching, several times a week on a daily basis. And, it's just a very, very, very exciting time. And a lot of what Bruce has talked about wanting to teach in the past, some of the higher energy bodies from, 5, 6, 7, those bodies that you get a little higher. Those teachings were closed. He couldn't open them because you need a shielded space. You need a space that is stable and that he's gone to the trouble to seal. And I'll let Bruce kind of talk more specifically about that, a little above my pay grade. But the reality is that in a space like this, in a shielded space, in a stable center, we'll have the chance to grow the community and deepen all of your participation in a really meaningful way. And, as somebody who's been around the system learning for almost 20 years now, I'm totally stoked. I mean, this is an amazing opportunity, and to see it really coming to fruition is a super exciting time. So that's what's going on, guys. Anybody out there excited? You can see some of those comments down there. I hope you join us out.
Yeah, type in, tell me what you think. And, if you've been to an event with Bruce in the past, I don't know, I've been around for around 10 years, but he's asked to figure this out and how are we going to get this building. And we've had committees and subcommittees and subcommittees of subcommittees. And, in the end, Bruce basically took his house and put it on the market and sold his house to make this happen for the community, the house that his kids grew up in, so that we could get into the building. And so I just wanted to recognize that Bruce just made it happen. And his cry to us was, look, if it doesn't happen by the time I'm 70, which is early next year, then I'm not sure I can, a lot of the stuff that I hold isn't going to be able to be passed, and it's going to be kind of a waste, some of the things that I did with my life. So I just want to acknowledge that Bruce did that. I also want to acknowledge the community for holding the space and supporting Bruce and everything throughout all these years, so that to make this happen as well, because you've been like a massive part of it. And everybody plays their own role. So Bruce, I'm going to pitch it back to you and Paul. Maybe talk about what a sealed space is, because there's probably some people out there who are like, what the heck does a sealed space even mean,
Well, I'll try and, now we're going into the area of what you could call the esoteric side of Taoism. Many of the great religions and esoteric, whatever you want to call it, they have always understood something. When you start doing very, very positive things with human beings that allows them to evolve, there are other, let's just say, interdimensional beings, or if you want to be humorous, call them spooks. They don't want it to happen. Their agenda is negativity. And so that is why every major temple that was built in India, in China, for that matter, many of the early Christian churches and some of the big cathedrals, they had all sorts of things that dealt with sacred geometry or ways of putting energy inside walls that would block. Now, why do you want this? Well, because when these spooks can come in, they can, if people are weak, they can attack their unconscious mind in ways that are not pretty. Okay? So you want to protect people from that. You want to make sure that they have a neutral thing. The second thing about a building that's sealed is that then you can empower the space that's within that to make it the most possible for the people who are doing things in it to progress. Now, part of this is that the land itself that the building is on has to be right. because, and this is not something that you can create, because this is a combination of what's coming up from the earth below the building and what's coming down from the sky, which is a funnel literally for what in the universe can enter the planet Earth. And the way these two things mix either can make that place, that space, make it easier for people to learn, easier to manifest what they're doing, or more difficult. Now, for example, I looked at 20 some odd locations for a retreat center, and I looked.
Bruce, you're cutting up a little bit. Are you there still?
Well, until he comes back, I'll say that it was probably a lot more than 20. We kind of looked at a lot of different places, and it's not like there were very, very few that actually had a conducive energy to be able to start a center like this. And it's really interesting to watch Bruce do it. You know, he has to go into the very specific place and walk around and feel for if this is a good spot for these teachings to happen. And when we walked into this place in Lafayette, it's in the Boulder, Denver area. We walked in, we started walking around, and as a student, when you've seen these areas where it didn't work out and you kind of experienced some of these small disappointments, when you walk in and you kind of see Bruce's face getting kind of like a little bit of a smile, like this is a good spot. And you can kind of feel that this is something that might work. Let me tell you, that's a really exciting moment for the community, because, you know, we've been waiting for this for a very, very long time. So it was really neat to be in this place specifically and see Bruce really looking at it and saying, this is the spot. This is where we're going to make this happen. And now, you know, we're kind of on our way. This is becoming a reality.
Paul, I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next slide, and maybe you can tell people more about some more details about the center. And then also, although we have the building, there are other needs to help build things out. So we'll share a little bit more about that too. Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Are you going to switch the slide there? I'm still on. Yeah, there we go. There's a look at the spot. Some beautiful blue skies. Like we mentioned before. It's about an 8,000 square foot building. You know, we've got a couple of training areas there. I've seen a couple of the comments with people saying, "Oh, this is amazing, but you know, I still will never be able to get to Denver." One of the amazing things about having a place like this is when Bruce is teaching all the time to a live audience, and we're in a place that we can control the production value of much more easily. That means that our ability to broadcast teachings to the entire community worldwide, wherever you are, is going to get much, much stronger. So the idea of this is that not only are we going to be able to start enriching people's personal practices, you know, those of you who can join us, those of you who are in the area, and those of you who are just really serious about the material and just want to dive as deep as you can, not only the people who can make it there in person, but as Bruce is rolling out this material, that we'll be able to deliver it to you in a much smoother, more comprehensive way in the online community. And that's going to be a big thing, you know, so even if you can't get there physically, you'll be able to have that sense of participation in this lineage with these people, with our community. And we're going to try and start bringing those teachings out to you in a much more powerful way. So, I see that we got our new slide there with the live classes and global streaming.
I'm 1 second. I got knocked offline. Don't ask me why, but my computer did. Should I finish what I was saying, or should you finish what you're saying, and I can come back and finish what was happening before?
I'm not one to interrupt the master, so by all means, go ahead and pick up with where your thought was.
So what happened was that I looked at over 30, you know, I looked at over 20 retreat centers. I actually spent a few months in Europe trying to find one. And I spent plenty of time in California trying to find one. Well, anyway, it just happened that one of my old students from Denver, that I had come to see him, and I saw him in Boulder. And I was there not for a retreat center, but I told him what I was looking for, and the next thing I know, he found something, and it fit let's just say the minimum requirements for what a retreat center or a training center could be. And I had been looking for, close to 5 years for a place like that with no luck, including spending a couple of months of Europe traveling all around, because that took time, because it takes time to get to places. So anyway, we found a place, and it's happening. Paul.
Yeah. Well, we were just going to kind of going through some of the details when the fire element got a little out of balance and kicked you offline there. So now we were kind of coming down to, we were talking about some of the online community options and how everyone's going to get a chance to engage wherever you are in the world. But for those of you who have already been, who know what it's like to travel all over the place and do these trainings, we're going to have a lot more trainings that are deep dives into more advanced material that Bruce has not been able to teach previously, because we needed the center. We needed a Taoist training center that would support those teachings. And now they're going to be made available in a very deep way. And for those of you who have always talked about, how's Bruce going to pass the lineage? What's going to happen? Bruce already mentioned earlier that, he's not planning on living to be 200. So, when is that going to happen? And the answer to that is, well, it's going to start happening now, because with those deeper trainings, with that ability to keep going, on a daily basis and train up disciples who will hopefully be able to hold the lineage, this was the next step, and that's where we're at now, which is again why this is such an exciting time, that we're going to be able to broadcast those teachings worldwide, at the same time go very deep with the individuals who want to take it to.
As many of you who have seen me live when I've taught, I've said this, I've been back in the West for this last thing from Beijing, a little bit over 30 years. I have only taught 25% of what I learned in China. And the reason why I did not teach more than that was because I did not have the shielded space. My favorite phrase was, you can't bake a cake without an oven. I had all the ingredients. What I didn't have was the oven to cook it in. Well, this retreat center, this training facility is now going to make that possible. And my intention is that over the next 10 or 15 years, everything that I spent all those years in Asia learning, I'm going to do my best to download it into the West. And in the hope that it can help many, many, many people. And it's also my hope that many, through all the online stuff, that many of the ideas that are part of the let's say, the hidden information of ancient China, because China wasn't accessible to the West for a lot of reasons, that when that comes out, somehow that's going to help catalyze positive things occurring in the world. So all I can say is I'm very glad that we're in that
And
space.
Bruce, we've got a slide up here just to some special topics that we're going to do. And Paul, you want to run through some of the things that he hasn't taught a lot of, in like deeper depth, but that will be starting to open up, and kind of a new phase of teaching for Bruce and Energy Arts. Yeah.
Well, I think that, with the slide up, I'd love to hear what Bruce has to say about some of these, because, I've been at some of the live teachings where even just the very shell of the egg is touched on when it comes to the I Ching and the Tao Te Ching and some of the deeper meditation practices. And Bruce, you want to give people a little bit better idea of some of the things that you'll be able to do here that you haven't been able to in the past?
Well, for example, one of my thoughts is that, after teaching for a couple hours at night, that maybe the last half an hour I'm going to it's going to be about meditation. Okay. But also during that time, I would teach about the Tao Te Ching, and whether I'll teach the I Ching or not, I don't know, because if I start teaching that, it's going to take at least 10 years to finish it. And so it's just going to be a question of where the time and everything rolls on. But in that thing of doing things, this is now where I want to teach the material in Taoism that's about the higher energy bodies, the psychic, the karmic essence. Those are things that I want to do. And it's also that in health and healing practices, so I've done teachings and instructor trainings with Tai Chi and qigong, And because everybody's going, I don't have that much time, but blah, blah, blah. But the biggest thing is I didn't have a place where if it gets to a point that I really want to train people who can really take things very far and continue them so it continue for 100 years. Well, those type of trainings are not going to last 2 or 3 weeks. They're going to last 2 or 3 months or more. Well, this training, this place is going to enable that to happen. Because one of the things that's very, very difficult is it drives you mad that every single time you want to teach something, you've got to scout a place you can teach it in. I mean, like weird things that we've had. We had one place where we had taught for a year or two, and then, you come to where you're going to have the summer retreats. Person lets us know about a month and a half beforehand. Oh, I'm sorry. I just sold the land to a rich Silicon Valley company for, I forget what it was, 10 or 20 or $30 million. We were able to get it cheap. Boom. And you cannot believe what it was to scramble and find another place. Or places that we've had several times where we've had a place and then all of a sudden, they let us know a few months before and, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do it. Well, now there's not going to be an issue of having a place to bake the cake. We will have an oven to bake the cake so we can do it. But I think it's also that, that once we get past people doing, the more beginning stuff, then we can start having teachers for these, for all the various subjects that are within Taoism. And we have a place where they can go for longer periods of time.
I remember having conversations with Bill Ryan and Eric Peters and some of the senior instructors back in the day when you used to teach in Boulder. And they would talk about the elemental practices that you would do because you were doing regular classes. And all of a sudden there would be something and you'd say, okay, it's time. And you'd take them out to a lake or you'd take them out to a forest.
Oh, okay. Do I know about that? Well, it's possible it could happen in this place. Okay. There is a whole thing inside of Taoism that are 5-element practices. But they only occur at the actual time a season is changing. So we think of seasons because, like time, we have clocks. And so we say on April 22nd, this is the change of the season. But if you actually then talk about what's really happening with the energy of the seasons, it's the conjunction between what's coming down from the stars and what's happening in the earth. So you basically get at most about 2, maybe 3 weeks where, okay, it's coming. So I can tell you that in 2 or 3 weeks, it's happening. And during those times, I used to have trainings where, again, that was all the notice people got. Everything I've been doing has been based upon people scheduling and whatnot. But for people who were trying to become disciples and trying to learn the whole tradition, or at least people from the local area, then, those things you can't tell people when they're going to happen more than sometimes 3 weeks. Usually 2 weeks is the maximum because I can't tell, because it's like the whole thing of the energy of the earth and the sky just pulls into a gestalt. And then you go, okay, here it comes. So those were things I did. I mean, I'll give you what's like what I thought was one of the cuter things, that it was a thing on the metal element. And one of my instructors, Dave Hoots, and he was working, with some metal stuff. And then all of a sudden it hit him. The guy became a blacksmith from it, which I never would have, not my thing as it were, but it sure as hell was his. Now there's another thing that's very, very, very important about having a teaching space from my point of view. Every major tradition has something going on about death and dying. And a lot of it is just about beliefs. You're going to die, there's going to be a heaven and there's going to be a hell, or there's going to be this spot in the universe where you're going to go and blah, blah, blah is going to happen. But within Taoism, they actually have all kinds of practices that, number one, prepare a person for the time of death, which is not a small thing. You'd be surprised. A lot of people do not approach death in the most salubrious manner. I mean, they have problems with it. So there's one thing about that. But then there's the second thing about, well, what do you do from the time that you die to when you reincarnate? And then that's not all of it. Then the next thing is that what can you do in this life? What can you train so that whatever skills, whatever essential qualities you have can be put inside what is going to reincarnate. So when you go to another place, they're going to come out. Now, understand something. We live on the earth, right? So we got machines and blah, 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 blah. Well, there's a lot of places in the universe where you can reincarnate that are not going to have the same stuff. You may not even be corporeal. You may not even be a solid physical being. You may be an energy of light. You may be a being of energy. You may be composed of water. You may be in a place where you'd be really surprised what some of the beings in the universe can look like and be like. But that's a different matter from the essential qualities that you would be able to use regardless of how you incarnate, wherever you might incarnate. And this is something that is within the Taoist tradition that I've never seen or heard of in any other of the Earth's traditions. So that is something I'd really like to pass on. And is also the other thing that when people die, you can use the fact that somebody has died and the community can come together. And everybody in that community can benefit from that death because it can catalyze something in them, which can cause them to spiritually evolve, as well as it can help the person who's dying transit to where they have to go in the best possible way. So this is something which is, shall we say, is not the norm. But it is something that's part of Taoism, and it's not the same stuff that's in Buddhism and is in Hinduism and is in the inner traditions of the Christian church. It's something else.
Well, we've been on for about an hour now. What I want to do is basically shift to the next slide. And although we have the building, we actually still have some needs. And there's been some people in the chat asking how they can help, how they can participate. We've basically bought the building, but what we need to do is renovate the building. And we basically need a little bit more to basically build out the inside. Some of the things that we need to do is work on the roof. We need to build out a studio. We need to build out a floor. If a bigger donor comes in, we can look at a second location. But right now, we just want to get this one up to snuff. And Paul,
or even a second floor on the building.
Yeah, you can put a second floor on this building. Paul, where are we at with closing? We're like a week away from closing on the building. Is that right?
Yeah, we're really close. We're just a little over a week away from the closing happening, and like you mentioned, Bruce kind of just took the bull by the horns and sold the house that he's been in for a very long time. I mean, I remember my very first training going there, to his place after the training for the past 20 years when his kids were 4 or 5 feet tall, and to see this change, to watch that become something else is kind of a big deal. So he's made that big step to kind of transition from that old home into this new place. But I mean, we wanted to find a very good place, and we found it, but now it requires some remodel and some work too. So the center is absolutely happening, but whether or not we can kind of get up and ready before the summer trainings, that is going to have a lot to do with how much support we can get from the community, and not just in the form of fundraising, but in the form of the product releases that you're talking about right now. By watching this webinar, you're already a part of helping this happen, because what we're going to do is take some of the proceeds, a large portion of the proceeds that come from this release, and it's going to go right into that remodel. So when you are thinking about wanting to learn more about the 5 elements, and not just this teaser of what you're getting in the webinar, but a deeper dive into all the material that's on the product for the 5 elements release, that's a way you can not only support your own study, but it's going to go into helping the center become a reality much faster, so we can kind of keep going. And I'm going to be there on the ground, getting all this stuff happening, and the more resources we have to make it happen, the faster it can become a reality. So I'm really stoked to see that we can share this material and also have a reciprocal benefit of being able to make this center happen faster.
Well, what we did is we basically thought, how can we use this 5 elements launch as a way to fuel the center? And really I think there's 2 parts of this. One is we need a little extra, but also we really want to bring the whole community in to participate in opening the center and create kind of a feeling of goodwill. And so what we did is we got together and we basically put together 5 supporter packages. The lowest is $50 and the highest was $100,000. That was the highest we could think of. The highest packages, we call it the benefactor of the Tao. I'll share that in just a bit. Nothing's for purchase right now. We're going to send out a link tomorrow and basically open up basically it's a fundraising campaign, but what the packages are is you get a group of products, and then in addition, you're helping to found this center and get it off the ground. And for the higher donations, or if there's anybody out there that has more to give, then that's great. And if you can only do the lowest level, that's cool too. We really just want to see everybody participate, and we tried to put together a bunch of packages that actually have a lot of meaning and value, so that you're getting even more than what you give us. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let me just run you through the 5 packages, and you can kind of decide how you want to participate. We'll also send out an email tomorrow, and you can go online and check that out. So we have 5 packages, and we've kind of named them arbitrary names. The first is a community sponsor package. The second is the new 5 Elements program. That's a 7-hour training, and I'll go more in depth in that in just a bit. And then we're putting 2 programs that have been off the market for several years. We're going to put those back on the market, one of which has never been sold outside the training circle. And then we have 2 higher end packages if somebody's interested in really contributing at a bigger level to help these Taoist work get out there. Okay, so this is the first package. It's the community sponsor package. It's $50. And so we wanted to have a package that everybody could be part of. It's 3 really high value digital programs. One's on Taoist breathing. I spent 4 weeks with Bruce in Crete, and that breathing training he did is one of the most amazing things I've ever been part of. The second is a Dragon and Tigers Beginners program. That's one of the major beginning sets that Bruce teaches, and it's a really great value. And the third is a Tao of Letting Go program, which is a meditation program. I don't know when we put that out, probably 12 years ago. It's an older program, but one of the most powerful on inner and outer dissolving and Taoist meditation. And so separately, these are $120. You can get them all for $50. This is going to be available tomorrow. The next package is this is the one that I'm hoping a lot of people will take advantage of. It's an all new program on the 5 elements. It's great because in Boulder, like Bruce and Paul said, we're going to have the ability to start to tap into these elements. This was filmed on location next to the ocean, next to a tree, next to a volcano. And so this program takes you through the 5 different elements and how to use these in practices. And it also includes meditations for those practices. In addition, you'll get everything in the first package. So you'll get 3 programs in addition. And then there's 2 extra bonuses for this package. And one is a program on standing qigong and the 5 elements. So the Taoists have a whole canon of standing practices. There's like 200 standing poses. And so this is some of the basic standing poses within qigong. And then you can use those with the 5 elements. And then the other is Santi in the 5 elements. Santi is basically the primary practice within Xingyi. Bruce, do you want to say anything about Santi and the importance in the martial arts? Or?
Well, I would say a few things about Santi. The first one is that if you're going to just talk about standing qigong, it is for one single thing about the strongest thing in the game. That came from one of the people in Xingyi who studied whatever, and he came up with things about 8 standing postures. It's extremely popular in China, and you will see people doing this in parks everywhere in China, and it's a very important power generation thing. But it's even more than that. The one thing that Santi can do, if you really do it, is take what I would call a weak will or a not such a strong will and make it very, very strong. And this becomes important for people who have trouble overcoming obstacles. I mean, they want to do something, but they can't quite get the oomph to go through it and succeed. As well as for people who can do that, it just makes their will dramatically stronger. As well as they get a sense of how their mental will being extended to produce qi, how it affects their body. Most people are actually not that aware of that when they do something with a very strong mental content, what it's doing to their body. And so Santi is one of the things that's brought back people's health and made them strong. But I think for a lot of people now, especially, I would call the computer generation, they don't realize how their brain, which is being sucked into these little machines, they don't realize what's doing to their body, and not good things to their body.
Yeah.
But
So,
with Santi, you
so, so the Santi practice is included in this. I'm not sure how many hours that is, but it's a lot of material. And so this is just $197. It's about a $700 value. It's $197 one payment or 3 payments of $67. Again, we're just trying to put together great packages that are going to do a lot of good for you, and then we're going to reallocate a lot of this to basically building out this new center that we have going on. So super excited about it. The next 2 packages are, there's a package 3 and a package 3A and 3B. The first one is a Tai Chi Mastery program, and this was an 18-month program that we did on the Inner Circle, and it's over 50 hours of material. You can get it all digitally. We haven't offered this. I think it's been over 2.5, 3 years that it's been in the Inner Circle, and we've never offered it as a package before, so it's the first time we've offered it. I was there for a lot of the filming of this. It's really an incredible package. Do you want to talk about a little bit about the form that you teach in here, Bruce, and the importance of this form?
Well, there's the Yang style of Tai Chi goes back a while, but if you go back to the guy who started the Yang style of Tai Chi, this thing is called the old Yang style because it comes from his 2 sons. And it is much closer to what the critical internal energy processes are and what Tai Chi was at the beginning, before it started getting more and more watered down through the generations. So, for example, most of the Tai Chi that people have now, it's either coming from, let's say, the 3rd generation of the Yang family, or people like Ching Man Ching or Huang Shengxian that was in Malaysia. These are all 3rd generation Tai Chi things, but there was a lot in the basic principles that underlie the internal structure of Tai Chi, how the internal Chi work really worked. That's in this. And what I did was that originally when I came back from China, and I tried teaching the Yang style in Tai Chi, I had people that come to me who've been doing Tai Chi for 20 years, but they found it difficult. And anyway, so I stopped doing it, and I just focused on the Wu style, which has the whole spiritual element of Taoism, which is not in the Yang style of Tai Chi. But what if you're looking for is just the Qi and the strength and everything that Tai Chi does is martial arts and whatnot, that is much easier to find in the old Yang style of Tai Chi. Whereas the Wu style of Tai Chi has that stuff, but it's a little bit more subtle. But it's also that I teach it mostly because of how it's directly connected to Taoist meditation, which the Yang style of Tai Chi is not.
Yeah, so this is the old Yang style Tai Chi. We don't know of any other program like it. Bruce is one of the only people who's kind of put out this direct to source. And then it's just a lot of great material. If you're doing current Yang style or you do another style of Tai Chi, it's really an incredible program. So you'd get everything on the first 3 packages, plus you get this 18-month Yang style training program that gets loaded into your membership area. And that's $1,500 or 3 payments of $500. Really, there's nothing like this out there, and it's a really good value. The 3B package is the Bagua supporter package, and this is our Bagua mastery program, plus the Bagua palm changes. So over, I think it was 8 years, we did a retreat on each palm change, and it took us 8 years just to do the Bagua palm change. And then the Bagua mastery program was a 4-week Bagua instructor training that got turned into this. And this is over 80 hours of digital.
And a 1,200-page book.
And a 1,200-page. It's not really a book. It's more like a deep dive manual. Like book isn't really the right word for it. So this has been off the market, I think, for over a year. This is the other option. So you get everything in the first 4 packages, excluding the Tai Chi Yang style. And this is the other option if you're interested in Bagua. This is a really good value. And again, it's the same price. It's either $1,500 or $500. However you guys or gals want to get in, whether it's the $50 or the $200, or if you haven't gotten one of these mastery programs, these are really great value. It's like a litany of information that you can use for years and years and years. And if you start coming to the center, it'll really support your practice. And And then for those who have more to give, who want to really be part of the center, we have a supporter of the Tao package. And this is really a way to help us make a really big difference with the center. You know, you're going to help us to set up part of the production studio, or fund a third of the floor, or, you know, I don't know how we don't know exactly how everything's going to be used, because we're closing on the building in, say, another week or so. But we actually really do need the funds, and we can do it over a couple of years, but this would help us to make big leaps. This is all access to all events with Bruce for the next 2 years. We're going to hold a special benefactor event next year. It's going to be a 4-day retreat at the new location. You'll be able to go to that for free. Plus everything in the previous 3 packages, so that you get the Bagua Mastery, the Old Style Yang package, the 5 elements, qigong, plus the 3 programs, plus Asante. And so if this is you, if you have whatever, if you won the lottery, your trust fund, you're a clever entrepreneur, you're an awesome thief that has stole something, you want to give it back to the world. However, if this package is for you, we know it's not for everybody, but we've tried to make packages so that everybody can give and support to their need. And this really is, we really do need people to step up and grab a few of these packages. So if you're interested in this tomorrow, you can't buy this online. This is kind of by application, in a sense of we want to make sure that it's a good fit and that you're aligned with our needs. And you can just fill, I think it's like a 5-question thing, and then we'll just get in touch. And if you're there, we'd like to know who you are, actually. You know, if you're going to attend every event for the next 2 years, or even a few of them, just let us know, and we'll just get on the line with you and figure out how to make that happen. The next package is, I guess, our benefactor of the Tao package. I kind of like the romanticism of the Renaissance, where you had, you know, patrons. Maybe this is patron of the Tao or whatever, but where, you know, like if you're in the arts of the Tao, where if you're dedicated to teaching and doing something, sometimes it's hard to be out in the world and making money at the same time. And so this is going to enable us to fund some scholarship. It's going to enable us to, you know, add the second level onto the building so it can reach more people. And again, this is for you. It's so that we can build out and make the center the best center possible. If there's a larger benefactor out there that wants to donate land or this kind of amount, let's talk. You know, now's the time. Bruce is all in for the next 10 years-ish, plus some, to get this the whole lineage out. And so this is for those that can afford it and want to help spread Taoism throughout the West, including Europe. And we had looked at a European center, and this just kind of sorted its way out. But if we get enough, then we really want to go for a European center eventually too. So the package includes 5 years access to all events with Bruce. That's a lot of training. All the products we currently have in our library, we'll send them to you, digital version, and anything that we release in the next 5 years. We're going to do some private benefactor days, and of course the 4-day event next year. And then if you want to attend filmings, private events, basically this is somebody that's so aligned with us that, you know, your family. And we're not trying to exclude anybody by offering this bigger package. It's more just trying to move this whole movement forward as a community and enabling the building out of buildings and things like that. Yeah. Paul or Bruce, do you have anything more to say about the packages or this package?
Yeah, I do, actually, because I mean, I'm there all the time, and I do the event coordination. So when I'm interacting with these practices in the community, you know, I see all your faces, and I know what it's like to be in person doing stuff with Bruce. And I know sometimes when you hear this stuff about, you know, this package, that package, and online type things, I mean, we're used to being bombarded by a lot of sales messages, and I know how that can feel sometimes. But the reality of it is that what we're really wanting to do right now in this moment is take all of you who are outside in the community and kind of focus that and coalesce it and engage everyone at a deeper level. And so we're kind of making these packages available so that, you know, you can get something. It's not just like, hey, give us a bunch of money. It's that we're saying, look, if you can't make it to a training, if you're going to study online, this will take you as deep as you can go in your own home. I've been at trainings where we've done the Dragon and Tiger instructor training. People studied the course beforehand. They came in and damn if they didn't look pretty good. I mean, like the more that you have the tools, when you do get to study in person with an instructor or with Bruce or with anyone inside the community, you already have that knowledge base where you can make the most of your time. And so by acquiring these tools to help your own life and, you know, doing that now in this particular moment, what that does is it lets us in a very real way pass something that has genuine benefit for mankind. It will benefit you and it will benefit many, many others. You know, and I see that all the time when I'm at the trainings and I get to talk to people face to face and they tell me about how they use this, you know, to overcome cancer and mitigate their chemotherapy or to recover from heart surgery, or just that they were, you know, getting over depression. When we went to see this building, we got on the train at the Denver airport and this guy kind of does this little double take and he talks to Bruce. He's like, "Are you Bruce Frantzis?" And we were like, "Yeah." And he said, "I used your online course. I did your standing course and I had this massive depression. And I did that for about 6 months. And, you know, my depression, you know, was alleviated and I feel much more alive. And I just wanted to say thanks." And that was kind of our welcome to Denver when we got off the plane, that somebody had used these materials in a real way. And, you know, we took that as a pretty good sign. It was like, hey, all right, good stuff. So you know, at the bottom of this sales message is that we want you to have something and we want you to join into this family in a way that we can help these teachings expand throughout the globe in a big way. I mean, you've seen the impact that Bruce has. Imagine if we had, you know, 5, 10 people that could also, you know, teach at a high level and all the good that could do for the world. So don't lose the forest for the trees and understand that we're trying to do something very positive for everyone involved. And we hope that, you know, you can benefit from these packages and come and see us in Boulder.
Yeah, so that's a quick overview of the packages. There's kind of a wild card package, which is if you have other ways of support, if you real estate, land donations, stock transfers, any other cash donations. You know, if you have a proposal, we're here to hear it. The nice thing is we've got a center. We've locked in the purchase. We've sold the house. Bruce has sold his house. I haven't sold my house, but. You know, so we're going all in. And again, you know, I want to say that the center for me, you know, if you've been around on social media, you know, 10 years ago, when we first did the Bagua Mastery Program, this is interesting, but we recorded on tape and the cameras were like $3,000 cameras and we had to transfer them to digital and it was a whole process. And now with this facility, with Bruce teaching, with the senior instructors teaching, we can capture a lot of this material ongoing 24/7 inside the facility and really be not only just recording it, but preserving it for future generations and creating additional products for the community. And so, like, I mean, how great would that have been if we had had that when, you know, like if we could have done that with Leo, Bruce's teacher and all these other great people, but we don't have that. What we have is what we have right now. And so I think there's an awesome opportunity within the center to really help get higher level practices out there. So you're going to get an email tomorrow about all the different options. You can go on to the offer page and hopefully participate. And we would just invite you to. Bruce, do you have anything else to say? We're going to take a few questions at the end here. We wanted to keep this under an hour and a half, so we got about 10 minutes left. We'll take just a few questions and then we'll sign off. And we're excited to let you know more in the future on emails.
And well, I mean, for example, I mean, beside the center, we're right next to Boulder. We're not in Boulder, but we're 10 minutes from it. That, you know, if we do get someone who's like, you know, just really has a lot of money and would like to help, the fact of the matter is that if there really is an excess, that could very easily fund a retreat center for Europe and all the people in Europe and a place for all the instructors that are in Europe to have a place they can come and teach and get things going. And then I would also go there at times. So, you know, I saw something just come up. What about Europe? Well, let's put it this way. As long as the funds are there, I'm perfectly fine to do that. And I'm perfectly fine to support a retreat center in Europe. Anyway, above and beyond that, all I have to say is this. My teacher in China was the head of a major lineage that goes back 2,500 years. He in China was what called a Taoist immortal. When I first came back, he always wanted me to teach meditation. He said, that is your greatest talent. I didn't want to do it because from my experiences in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and in most of the spiritual groups I had seen in the West, I just saw that within them were a lot of what I would just call nut jobs. I mean, they were going through the spiritual process and they were just unraveling. I didn't want to deal with it. And so, but after being back in the West for a couple of years as my compassion grew, I figured out a way how I could do it where I was fine with it. And now I actually enjoy teaching meditation more than anything else. Now, previous to that, in a lot of the world, I was known as a martial art guy because even though I learned all these spiritual things from the time I was 19 years old, the fact is that I was a top-class martial artist, and I felt that I wanted to help promote the internal martial arts tradition of China. But now my interest is much more in what the spiritual side of martial arts is. So I'm not as interested anymore in having a school just be what I call a school of smash and bash. Essentially, how can you kill your human being in the most efficient manner possible? That was my training when I was younger, and that is what gave me the focus I needed to really do spiritual work. But I think Taoism is one of the joke I've always used for years is the world's last exploited religion, spiritual tradition. And I think it's one of the most valuable ones. And in my opinion, the way the Taoists are so, and everything they do so practical, I believe it transits into the way modern life is. Much better than, in my opinion, what I've seen of many of the other spiritual traditions out there. It's simply because the Chinese, their whole culture is based on pragmatism. And Taoism, in that sense, it has that position where, for example, a lot of what came out of India was much more based on metaphysics. It's a very metaphysical country. It's a very philosophically in every way. Okay. I make a joke. In the place where the quote unquote attained enlightenment, knowing whether that was the actual place in Bodh Gaya is kind of hard to know. I did some Tai Chi when I first went there in 1969. So I'm doing this set. I'm doing it for about 6 hours, right? And after it was over, it was just very, very interesting. The Indians came up to me and all they said is that, oh, and what God are you representing doing this? They assumed it was a spiritual thing about God and some. They said the metaphysical point of view, where I also can remember another place in Japan where I was practicing in a big open lot next to a nice big building. It was one good place to practice. I mean, it really open space in Tokyo was at a premium. And these little kids came by. Now they didn't know what Tai Chi was. And they just said, oh, what kind of martial art is that? It just the sheer difference in the cultural atmosphere. I think Americans, Europeans are very pragmatic people. And the actual pragmatic stuff in Taoism that I think, let's just say pragmatically, really on the ground, really benefits human beings. That's what I want to try and bring forth in this center.
Okay, one question, Bruce, I think would be useful. How does Taoist meditation connect to the 5 elements? Because since we're launching a kind of a 5 elements program and your passion is Taoist meditation, could you answer that question, please?
Well, the very beginning practices of Taoist meditation are not relating directly to the 5 elements, but once you get past the little point, you're talking about that when you're trying to get rid of your blockages and all sorts of things, then you start actually manipulating the 5 elements inside of you to start dealing with the way those elements specifically deal with your spiritual obscurations, your spiritual blockages, what inside you is stuck. And they're part of every Taoist meditation program, whether it's sitting meditation or it's moving meditations like qigong. So that's about all I could say. They're built right into it, but they're not, it's not the biggest focus in the beginning because first you got to get your basics together. But then it is, whereas in qigong, 5 element practices are done virtually from the beginning. because chi practices are, if truth be known, a lot easier to do than spiritual practices are.
Yeah, and one question is, will there be beginners training courses at the new training center?
Yeah, I mean, this is my hope. If I get enough of my senior instructors coming and teaching, the big complaint a lot of people, or the things my senior instructors have always said, is that you shouldn't be teaching these beginning courses. Your value is teaching the stuff that comes beyond that. But if you don't do the beginning courses, you can't do the stuff that's after it. If you can't do arithmetic, you sure as hell can't do calculus. So my hope for it eventually, in the beginning, I will be teaching beginners courses. But I've done that. And for example, if we talk about something like Tai Chi and Qigong, somebody at my level of the game, just showing you how to do your body with the coordination of Qigong and Tai Chi movements is a bit of a waste of time. It's like having a concert violinist, doing something at a school, recital for a dance or something. It isn't. But once you start getting past those basic things, which I will be training teachers, and they're the ones who are going to work much more with the beginners. But in the beginning, I will be teaching beginners, but eventually I will not be teaching beginners. And I think this point should be made. In China, real masters. And at this stage of the game, I think I can call myself a master. I've had all the training. My teacher said I was, but they have a thing in North China. In the North China traditions, until you are 70 years old, it is considered to be immensely disrespectful to the tradition for you to call yourself a master. There's no way, as the phrase goes, the wine in the keg long enough to produce a really superior wine. But I'm going to do that in a couple of months. So now I actually can use the term master. And for those of you who've known me, I just called myself teacher. I have really never allowed in my classes for people to call me master. I have refused. I'm a part of that tradition. But I will be teaching beginners in Boulder, the town next to Boulder, at least in the beginning. But the hope is to get it to transfer to where the people I'm training as instructors to teach beginners, so that I'm also then separately really teaching them how to teach beginners. Okay? Then I'll do more advanced stuff. And that is what the point. All my senior instructors have said, my God, you shouldn't be teaching stuff for ranked beginners. You should be teaching the stuff that you're the only one that can do it. So that is the hope. But in the beginning, I will teach some beginners.
If I can just pop in real quick, Rich, take advantage of the fact that I've got a voice here. On Sunday, like Bruce and I were talking about this in the schedule and everything, and so I want to make this very real for people. So, like one of the things that we had a chat about was that Bruce was like, yeah, well, like every Sunday, I'd just like to do a meditation where everybody is invited, and I lead a meditation on Sundays. Like that's inclusive. You can be the most advanced practitioner inside of our system, or you could be walking in that day, and you're going to get what you need in that moment to take the next step in your journey. And so there's a certain magic to having the community coalesce in one place where you can learn the movements, you can learn the coordination, the basic chi flows, and many other things from senior instructors, from regular instructors, even from your classmates who just know a little bit more than you do. And then with Bruce in that space, then you get the goods of what the transmission of the essence of the thing is. So at all levels, you're supported. And that's kind of the magic of this, is that, right now, we want you to engage with us in a spontaneous way. So if you're hearing this and you might have information or resources that we don't know about, and you clue us into that, we don't know what the potential is, but we're open to that. And there's a magic in it to have everybody interfacing in this way. And so something I'd like to just kind of throw out there as a quick question, Bruce, is what are some of the dynamics of a group practicing together, or the way even a worldwide group who's tied into a lineage, when they practice together, how does that change their individual experience?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things. The first thing is that live I can speak to a bit more because never having done a thing to where I'm broadcasting to the world, I'm not exactly sure what's happening to us. I don't have any practical experience with it, but I can talk about teaching large groups. I mean, the biggest ones I've pretty much done have been about 200. Okay, first of all, when you get a lot of people practicing together, a lot of people have all these experiences of all kinds of experiences of energy, experiences of this and this and that and that. And a lot of the time they assume this is coming from the teacher. It may or may not be. One of the things that happens is that when you get a lot of people practicing together, each of them amplifies the energy of the next person and what's in that space to a certain degree. I mean, you can even go back to Jesus Christ when he said, you know, when so many of you get together in my name. Well, it's not about whether that brought Jesus Christ into the room. I'm in no position to state. What I can state, though, is as you start getting more and more people, you start getting this energy, and then everybody who's there can share in it. So it can do something more than you could do by yourself. And this has been the secret of mass rallies. It's been the secret of, you know, the Sermon on the Mount, if you want to get to it. And that was like 5,000 people. But it's also the same thing that, you know, Mao Zedong used to have things where in Tiananmen, he had 4 million people. And I'm telling you, it wasn't just that he was a superstar in the energy field, and he was. It was that he knew how to amplify what was in the group. So that then the energy that's being produced from this large thing can go into each individual. And if you have a person who's, you know, really a lineage holder in Taoism, they actually can choose where it goes and how it goes. And they're actually aware of what's happening at the depths of that person, the members who are there, that those people don't even know about. But that's all part of the art of transmission. But the fact of the matter is that if you're just talking about what is the value of a lot of people getting together, is that them all being together is going to amplify the energy that each individual would normally have access to. And this is why, you know, churches, groups, you know, they love having big groups, because it makes it possible to give each person who's there something more. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Well, I want to thank everybody who showed up today. I think at our peak, we were almost at 900 people on the call today. We've got, I think, almost 100,000 people that are part of the larger community. And you know, most of those are online. And then we have a lot of regulars that attend the events. So I appreciate all of you. I also want to give just a quick shout out to Paul Palante here, who's really helped to orchestrate a lot of the details on the building. He probably didn't want me to say that, but you know, there's always somebody behind the scenes doing all the work, you know, and making things happen. And Paul, you've really showed up big here. So I just want to thank you for that.
I'm not the only guy doing that. There's a whole team of people back there doing a ton to make this happen. And it's just crazy exciting for all of us that it's actually a reality now. So thanks for that.
I thank you, Paul, also. And I thank you, Rich, also.
Yeah. And Bruce, thanks for making this happen and really stepping forward and going kind of all in. I like the phrase all in. So this is like a new phase for energy arts and I think for the teachings. And it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. Again, look out for an email tomorrow. If you miss any part of this, you can watch the replay. We'll tell you more about the 5 supporter packages tomorrow. One thing I do want to mention is that these packages are going to be available for like a couple weeks, and we're going to close it down. So we're only going to make them available for a limited time, because we have a building to build. We have to like get the money in, and we have to build the building, and we want to deliver the products to you. It's like, it's like a real thing. Like we have a roof to put in and walls to knock down and floor to buy. And so like, it's a limited promotion. So if you can give to your ability. If you have a lot, give a lot. If you don't have a lot, then just get in on a supporter package and just be part of it. I'd love to see, we have, I think, almost 500 people still on the call. Type in what's your biggest insight, what's your biggest takeaway, a message for Bruce. We'll pass on all these messages to Bruce so that he knows who everybody is out there. Like, type in this chat box, let Bruce know what your feeling is. Like, are you in, are you out? Are you excited or you're not? Just give us something.
And interact with, there's some other ways that you can interact with the energy arts community. I mean, if you practice this material and you want some real-time feedback on the things that you're going through, there's an energy arts training forum on Facebook. And we limit the access to that forum strictly to people who are interested in practicing the material. So you can ask lots of questions there, and we have some experienced instructors and other practitioners who can help you out. So if you're not already a member of the Energy Arts Training Forum on Facebook, then hop on there if you're somebody who likes to practice. That's the catch.
Okay, Bruce, I'll give you the last word here, last parting word for the community, for people listening, again, kind of give you the last word, and then we're going to sign off here. It's been about an hour and a half. So thanks everybody for sticking around for so long.
My teacher was a lineage holder in a lineage that comes directly from Lao Tzu. And I actually sat down where he actually, for 2,500 years, he explained, what people did stuff, and there was a fellow, and, who was constantly adding to it. So this is one of the world's genuine ancient traditions. And I think it's a very valuable thing, because a lot of what was found out in the past is as relevant today as it's ever been, because they're dealing with the core issues of being a human being living on this earth. Okay? It's not about beliefs. It's about the realities of what bring about genuine experience and genuine expansion of the human system. Now, my teacher spent the last 3.5 years of his life pretty much every day teaching me, and he was old. I mean, the guy was like 79, 80, 81. And that was a great strain, no doubt. But he did it because he thought that what was in Taoism could be of great help. And it could be of great help of human beings. And he felt that somehow he thought I would be, at least in terms of the West, someone who could give it a try. And I really want to like make a very big point about this. This is the wisdom of ancient China. This is real ancient wisdom. We're entering into an era where now China has come out of basically about 2 years of being suppressed like you can't believe. And whatever this has nothing to do with the modern Chinese government. All this stuff is coming from the ancient world. So I realized that in the future, who knows what the government in China is going to do? I mean, honestly, communism is a foreign ideology. China's always had emperors, which is basically what, the premier of China is now, is they just kind of made him a voted-in emperor. But the fact of the matter is that I don't know what's going to happen, because the phrase that's been said about China for 100 years is, watch out for this, don't let the sleeping giant awake. Even Napoleon was saying that 200 years ago. But whatever it is, do not confuse with this stuff that can help human beings with the politics is coming out of China. And God knows what any of that stuff is going to be, good or bad. But remember, this stuff always came from the point of view of somehow freeing the human spirit of what prevented it from truly reaching its potential. So that is what he wanted me to pass on. That is what he just passes on. And whatever, the politics of today, and, the government leader we have now and the government leaders we have in Beijing, all those people are sooner or later going to be dead, and still this stuff is going to be around. So we're talking about something that is incredibly stable and valuable. And I would really, please get to the tradition, because you can help that many things that were incredibly valuable from the ancient world become part of the richness of our life today. So that's like the last thing I wanted to say.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Bruce. Thanks to all the listeners for being here. Look out for an email tomorrow, and we'll see you at the center eventually. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, can't wait to meet you guys.